Hi everyone, we are waiting for Bhante to join.
Yes, Mahindra. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm on the phone to him now, so let's wait.
Right, thank you. Yeah.
It's okay.
I think it's okay because more people are joining now, so it's fine.
Yeah. Let's wait until Bhante joins in.
Good evening, Bhante Sujato.
Good evening. Sorry, I'm a bit late. My computer's been playing up. I wouldn't.
That's fine.
Anyway, here now.
Yeah, I think there's enough people join. So probably I'll invite you to conduct the Dhamma sermon.
Okay.
Yeah, so dear friends of Dhamma, it is with great pleasure that Vidarshana Buddhist Vihara cordially invite Bhante Sujato to deliver his Dhamma sermon this evening. Bhante Sujato is well known for his co-founding Sutra Central Buddhist website. He's also well known among Sri Lankan Buddhist community for his service. So without further delay, I'll invite Bhante to deliver his sermon. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so very much. And very nice to see you all. And how are you all doing? You're all okay?
Yeah, all okay.
Very good.
Very well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You haven't turned to, like, I'm feeling like it was raining again today, and I'm like, is this our life now? Is this, so it's just like, it just keeps going. So yeah, maybe next year we might have a summer. We passed a postman the other day, and we were saying, oh, you know, our sympathies for him, right? He hasn't to drive around in the rain every day, and he's, oh, well, you can't have sunshine every day. We're like, no, that's right, you can't have sunshine every day. So yeah, so we have a chance today to do some Dhamma practice together, do some meditation together. So maybe what I'd like to do is to just begin by saying a few words about meditation, and then we can do some sitting. What do you think? Would you like to do that? And then we can
Sounds good.
have a bit of meditation, and then we can maybe have a bit of Dhamma talk as well.
That sounds great.
Sound good? Okay, excellent. Okay, so I'll first say a few words about meditation. Now, one of the great secrets of meditation teachers is that we say a lot of things about meditation, but actually we don't really need to, because it's pretty simple. And the best approach to meditation is one that does not try to overcomplicate things. And we know that the Buddha taught 40 or more different kinds of meditation. And these days you can find many more different kinds of meditation. And so people sometimes want to know which one is right, which one's the best. They want to get the right meditation app, the right meditation teacher, the right method or whatever. But the reality is that actually pretty much most of those practices are fine. And if you want to meditate, there are many different ways to meditate that are okay. But the main thing in Buddhism and Buddhist meditation is that any meditation, good meditation, should start with mindfulness of the body. This is one of the most important things. Why? Because we have to build on our foundations. We have to start with things that are simple, things that are straightforward, and we have to gradually build up from there. If we sometimes a tendency, and this is something which is quite distinctive in the Buddha's approach to meditation compared to many other kinds of meditation. And so often, if we look in other religions, other approaches to meditation, they often start with something that's very highfalutin. So you might like recollect the name of God or something like that. So you're starting with something that's very exalted. It sounds very, very beautiful, very uplifting. And the Buddha was almost the opposite. He said, no, let's start with something that's very basic, right? If we want to meditate, what do you need to do? Well, walk mindfully. Can you do that? Can you breathe mindfully? Because it's easy to get caught up in a lot of the concepts, the words, the ideas and things, to get wrapped up in the philosophies and all of these things and find those things very exciting. But if we can't be aware of the present, then what exactly is it that we're doing? So this is how the Buddha wanted our spiritual practice to proceed. Start with things that are simple, that are present, and that are real. That's the foundation of spiritual practice. So we're going to this evening we're going to do some mindfulness of breathing meditation, and we're going to begin by, as always with meditation, we want to choose a time and a place, and we want to have like a container for our meditation. So meditation should be something like it's a space that you go into, right? So this is why we sit down, we adopt a meditation posture, and we're very clear in our minds, this is what we want to do when we want to meditate. Don't just sort of drift around, just sort of fall into it. Don't take it seriously. We set a time and a place. Now, traditionally, if you want to like go into a temple to meditate or a meditation hall, if you can do that, if you can have a space in your home, if you have enough room to have like a spare room with a shrine or something like that, then you can go into your shrine room to meditate, or you can go to a park or somewhere in nature. It's very nice to be able to do that to meditate. Or at the very least, if you can just set up like a Buddha image or some kind of place in your home where you can go to it and you can sit to meditate, that's going to give it some kind of, like the whole point is to lift up your mind and make it clear that we're coming into this practice of meditation. As well as the place, it's also important to define your time of meditation, because if you're not able to do that, you'll find that you're drifting around from one thing to another. So you need to, we need to contain the time of meditation so that we're not back here and we're not out there, but we're in here. So when you come to sit meditation, be definite in your mind about what it is. for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be present. What happened before that doesn't matter. What happens after that doesn't matter. But for now, this is what I'm going to do. And while you're sitting here, if you remember anything from happened previously in the day, set it aside. If your mind goes wandering off to worries and plans and all of those things, set it aside. That's not the time. Now is not the time for those things. Now is the time for the meditation. Okay, so we settle in and we just do that meditation. Only that meditation for this period of time. So this is what I mean about setting those boundaries of time and place. So once we have a time and a place to meditate, we also need to set up our posture for meditation. Posture is very important. If you see the Buddha sitting meditation, you don't see the Buddha lounging around on the couch to do meditation. No, you do not. You see the Buddha sitting cross-legged with his back straight, and he's looking dignified, and he's looking balanced, not tense, right? The Buddha never looks tense, but he looks energetic. He takes the time and the care to set his body in a dignified and balanced way. Now, if you can meditate on the floor, sitting cross-legged, in a nice cross-legged posture, then this is nice. This is the best traditional way of doing meditation. But our problem today is that because we're so used to sitting on chairs, that your body just doesn't have a lot of the flexibility that it needs to sit on the floor for long periods of time. So it's often just not so comfortable. So if you're comfortable sitting on the floor, great. If you would like to be comfortable sitting on the floor, then do some yoga. And I would strongly advise to speak to like a yoga teacher and get some feedback on how to sit correctly, because a yoga teacher will point out your posture, how you need to sit, how you can adjust your legs, and so you'll be able to sit in a more balanced way for the long term. And I really do, if you do want to sit if you're happy sitting on a chair to meditate, that's fine. But if you do want to sit on the floor, I really would recommend getting that kind of feedback from someone who knows what they're talking about, because it will help you to sit for longer, to sit more alert, to sit more comfortably, and to sit without without your feet falling asleep and all of that kind of thing. All right, so if you're sitting meditation on a chair, like these days I mostly sit meditation on a chair because I hurt my knees when I was younger, so I can't sit on the floor very much, so I sit on the chair. And when you sit on a chair, there's a few things to bear in mind. First thing is, most important thing is to sit on a chair that's reasonably firm and stable and upright. Don't sit on a rolling chair like an office chair. Don't sit on a folding chair or like a wobbly plastic chair. Don't sit on something that's too sloppy like a couch or something that's too cushioned. A little bit of cushioning is fine, but not like too much. It's usually good to have something that has 4 legs and a nice broad stable base, and with a bit of a back that will keep your back upright. And you sit on the chair, you either have your legs like at 90 degrees with your feet flat on the floor, if you can. But if, like me, my feet are usually a little bit too long to do that, so I cross my legs at the ankles, and that also works fine. So that's for sitting on a chair. So again, it's up to you which you think is right, but don't just take it for granted, and don't just sort of flop into a meditation posture. It really makes a difference in terms of how focused and how sharp that your mind is when you start the practice. Okay, so then we turn to the meditation itself. Now, as I mentioned before, there are many different kinds of meditation. Now, see, the thing is, like, if you've learned meditation before, you've done a retreat or you've learned from a particular teacher or whatever, and if you're happy doing that, then great, keep doing it. Okay, if you're interested, you want to learn and want to practice it the way that I'm teaching, then that's great. But if you're happy with what you're doing, that's also fine. So I'm not here to sort of persuade you that my approach is going to be better than your teacher or or whatever the way that you've learned it. Actually, like I said, I think all the different methods are fine. So do whatever you're happy with. So I'll just share with you my approach. And if you're interested to do that, then give it a go. Having said which, it generally speaking is a good idea to avoid mixing the different meditation methods. Okay, so think of your meditation method as being like a recipe. And if you're cooking, you can use this recipe or you can use that recipe, and they're both fine. But you can't just mix and match them without knowing what you're doing. Maybe this recipe puts in some soy sauce to give the dish some salt, and this recipe puts some salt in to give it some salt. And you think, well, they're both good, so I'll put both the soy sauce and the salt in, so it'll make it twice as good. And then you taste it, and then you're like, oh, that's too salty now. So this is what happens if you mix and match meditation methods if you don't know what you're doing. If you're an experienced meditator and you do know what you're doing, then that's fine. That's not a problem. But when you're starting out and you're learning a particular method, it's always best to try just do that particular method as precisely as you can. And give that a good shot, like at least try maybe like a couple of months practicing that regularly, and to just stick with that method until you've got a good sense for it and how it actually works and so on. So don't just give up after one or two goes, and don't be too like oh, a bit of this and a bit of that and so on. Give it a serious go. And if you're not getting anywhere after a couple of months, okay, maybe that method's not for you. Maybe try another practice. What else is there for the basics of meditation? I think that just about covers most of the basics. Oh yeah, so when it comes time to meditate, and when you begin to do the practice, then I mentioned before about like creating this container of that time and place. So one of the ways that we can do that is by doing some chanting at the beginning of the meditation. So you might recite the Pansil, for example, or Iti Piso, or you might even just to bow to the Buddha, to do like a puja, light the candles or something like that. These are things, these are not really kind of necessary, right? They're not, Buddha never said you had to do these things or anything like that. But what they do is they reinforce the mind and reinforce a perception of going into meditation. So there's something that we do to help to set the mind in the right direction and to lift the mind up to Dhamma. Okay, so there was one more thing I was going to mention. Let's slip my mind now. Meditation methods, mixing and matching. Maybe it'll come back to me later. All right, so why don't we do some meditation, and we'll do maybe 20 minutes of mindfulness of breathing meditation. What do you think? Yeah, okay. Okay. So sitting quietly. Taking the time to let your body settle back, let your mind settle back. Listen to the sounds around you. And bring attention to the gentle feeling of the breath as it comes in and it goes out. Mindfully breathing in, mindfully breathing out. Mindfully breathing in, mindfully breathing out. Not worrying about the past, not running off to the future, just being present. Let the breath take care of you. And each time you breathe, you can feel this gentleness, this softness. And this beautiful sense of ease that settles in and pervades through your whole body. Okay, now we're coming near to the end of the meditation. So I want you to, just before we finish, review back over the practice we've done together and just ask yourself, what had just happened? How did my mind change? Did that meditation bring me any peace? Do I feel that in my body and my mind right now? And before we finish, we can dedicate the merit of our practice. May all beings be happy. May all beings be well. May all beings find peace and awakening. So. Okay, very good. So I hope that you found a little bit of peacefulness through that meditation. You know, it's funny, we went and did a retreat last week and we were out in Dubbo and we went out to the zoo and we're sitting under the stars, under the moon. The full moon was rising and we're sitting in the trees and you can smell the eucalypt and the freshness of the air. And we went and we sat and afterwards people said, wow, that was so powerful to be able to sit in nature and do that meditation. You really feel that peacefulness come. And I'm like, now you know the monk's secret. This is why we do it, to make it easy. Nature is our friend and is helping us to find peace. So it's come to the portion of the evening. I'd like to say a few words on Dhamma, give a bit of a Dhamma talk. I won't give a too long a Dhamma talk, but I'll give a bit of a Dhamma talk. But before I start, I'd like to ask if people can turn their cameras on, if it's possible. I know it's not always possible, but if you can, thank you, Deepika, I appreciate that. And thank you, Sumana, I appreciate that, and Damini and Ruan, and all those who've turned their cameras on, because I like to see who you are. Nice. Rumi, oh, there you are. And Melanie's not with you? No. So it's nice if you can see people, because sometimes these days we do a lot of talks on Zoom and sometimes you find yourself giving teachings to a bunch of black squares and, well, they're not very responsive anyway. So, yes. So for this evening, I want to say a few words about the Dhamma and to just share some of the Buddha's teachings with you. And I'll continue with the theme that we've been talking about already, about the topic of anapanasati and mindfulness of breathing. I'm sure this is a topic that you have or heard about before, and so but there may be a few of you who are quite new to meditation, and so what I'll try to do is to bring some I guess some background and perspective to this teaching to try to enrich the meaning that we find through it. So before the meditation, I gave some very general guidelines on how to meditate and trying to sort of go back over the basics of that. Now, and so I'm going to go and revisit that again. I'm going to go like even a bit further back than I went there. So there I was talking about doing like the immediate things for preparing to meditate. But in fact, meditation is a lot more than that. Meditation comes out of how we live. You know, one of the things that you find these days is you find that there's all of these meditation apps, all of these meditation methods and so on that give you instructions on how to meditate. And if you look in the suttas, you find that the Buddha didn't talk about those kinds of things in so much detail. Yes, he did give, if you look at the different details and things found in different places of the suttas, you do find that there are those details there, but not so much detail that you have to sort of lay out every step. So what was he talking about, right? I mean, he wasn't talking about nothing. We have a lot of suttas and a lot of teachings. If you look at the Metta Sutta, for example, it's a good example of that. The Metta Sutta is the teaching on practicing loving kindness, but also is a sort of a brief meditation guide. And Metta Sutta is really divided into 3 parts. The first part is talking about the preparation for meditation. The middle part is talking about actually doing the meditation itself. And then the last part is talking about the results of meditation, the brahmaviharas that come out of the result of meditation. And it's interesting that the first third of that, Sakko Uju Chasuhu Ju Chasuachu Chasamadhuanati Mani, and all of these things are talking about, they're not talking about meditation at all. And they're not actually talking about techniques. And so I find that like a lot of the time when people talk about meditation, that there's kind of overly fixated on a meditation technique. Whereas what the Buddha was talking about was, how do we become a better person? How do we become a better human being? And sometimes I feel that the focus on like the mechanics, the technical details of meditation technique, it's almost like a bypassing of, it's almost like, how can I hack mindfulness so that I can get the results I want out of it without having to, like, you know, give anything up, you know? So of course that's not how the Buddha taught. The Buddha's primary aim was, how do we become free? And you can't become free because of a technique or because of a hack or because of a method. You become free through becoming, first of all, a better person, a kinder person, a more loving, a more compassionate person, a person who is more integrated. Like when we talk about being integrated, what we mean is that the different parts of our behavior and our personality fit together and support each other. So the Buddha's path was always an integrated path. It's a path where all of these different bits work together to lead to the result. And so these days I find people ask questions like, oh, do I really need this? Do I have to do that? You don't have to do anything. You don't have to practice the Eightfold Path. You don't have to be mindful. You don't have to do anything. The Buddha's not telling you what you have to do. The Buddha is helping you to become free. And so the question that we ask shouldn't be, do I have to do this? Do I have to keep all the precepts? Like, can I get away with, like, you know, a glass of wine now and then? I don't know. No one's like, we don't have like the precept police, you know. If you want to have a glass of wine, okay. But what does it mean, right? What it means is that when you do that, that your mindfulness is reduced. And that's what happens, right? I mean, we know that that's a physiological fact. Even the cops know that, right? They're sitting right now on a Saturday night, having on the side of the road, stopping people from driving their cars because they've had just 2 or 3 drinks of alcohol, because it makes your mindfulness bad. So can you have a couple of glasses of alcohol? I don't know. It's not my job to tell you how to live your life. But if you want to be mindful and clear, that's not going to help you. So all of these things that the Buddha was teaching, the precepts and the ideals of behavior, are things that are there to help you to become a better person, to help you to be happy, to help you ultimately to be free of suffering. So our question really shouldn't be, how can I get away with this? What's the minimum I can qualify? Our question really should be, what more can I do? How can I show my gratitude for these things that the Buddha offered us by lifting my life up and by living my life in a better way to more fully embody these principles of the Dhamma? So Buddhism is not a religion that's based on guilt, right? We don't want to go around, you know, shaming people, criticizing them and so on. for all these things, you know, and it's really kind of a I don't know, it's kind of not a very nice space to be in, you know, if you're always kind of obsessed with looking at others' behavior and, you know, telling them, you know, what you're doing and things like that. I mean, it's not very nice. I mean, sometimes you have to do it. I get it, right? Sometimes you have to do it, and especially if you're parents, I get it, right? It's okay, fine. But you don't want to be spending your whole life doing that. And if you look at how the Buddha was portrayed, especially in the Vinaya, and that's not how he was with the monks or with the Sangha, you know, he wasn't always sort of going around and being judgmental and telling people what to do. What he would do, he would respond when people brought complaints, or when he saw examples of bad behavior, he would call it out, and he'd have to try to ask people to do better. But he would always be very gentle and very loving and very forgiving when he would do that. So this is the more important part of meditation. So if we want to improve our meditation, first question we should be asking ourselves is how do we become better people? How do we live better lives? How do we aspire to live more harmlessly? How do we aspire to live more lovingly? How do we aspire to fulfill the potential that we have as human beings? Remember how the Buddha, after he was enlightened, you know, first thing was like, no, why bother trying to teach anybody? No one's going to get it anyway. Very relatable, very understandable. And then he was asked by Brahma, and he surveyed the world, and he saw that there are beings with different faculties. Now, this word faculty, indriya, is a very interesting word. And the meaning is not quite as obvious as you might think. So indriya is one of the words which is commonly used as a technical term in Buddhism. And we have like the five, the panchindriya, which is faith, mindfulness, energy, samadhi, and wisdom. Saying it's the same as the five balas or five powers. Now, a bala or a power is pretty straightforward in its meaning, right? And so that's pretty straightforward. But indriya is a slightly sort of intriguing term in terms of what it actually means. It's often explained as meaning something like having a controlling influence, or having something like a power or control over something. It's not a completely wrong reading, but I don't think it quite captures the sense of it. It seems that the word indriya derives ultimately from Inda, or Indra, the god who most commonly in Buddhism is called Sakka. So Sakka is the ruler of the gods. The Pali is always like Sakko Devanamindo, Sakka, the ruler of gods. So Inda, in that context, means something like the ruler. So Indriya, as an abstract noun, means something like the potential or the power of like a divine potential. And if you see in the Rig Vedas, the way that this is used, it's the Indriya is almost like a way that Indra would manifest his divine powers. In other words, a way that he would fulfill his potential. And that idea of fulfilling a potential is actually quite, makes a lot of sense in that kind of context. When the Buddha was looking around, he's seeing different beings with their different faculties, you know, some weaker, some moderate, some stronger. So what he's actually looking at is people's spiritual potential, that through the Dhamma, that it's almost like the Indriya is almost like the magnification or the realization of our spiritual strength and our spiritual power. So when you see that there are beings with these different levels of indriyas, then we know that they have this different potential and this different capacity to realize it. So through our meditation and through the way that we're living our lives, we are learning to make real our indriya, our faculties. We're learning to develop that and to bring that out. So to meditate, we try to live a good life. We keep our precepts, yes, but it's not just about keeping precepts. It's about how to live. And I think this is a really important thing to understand about the precepts. Like the precepts are like setting like a minimal standard of things. So for example, like the precept on speech is like to not lie. Okay, so okay, that's a minimum standard of speech, is to not lie. But there are a lot of other important things about speech that the Buddha also mentioned very commonly. For example, that we should try to use our speech meaningfully. That's important. That we should try to speak kindly. Also important. That we should try to communicate clearly. Yeah, also very important. And these are all aspects of right speech that the Buddha himself embodied whenever he spoke. It's not just not lying, but it's about communicating something meaningful, communicating it in a kind and uplifting manner, and doing so in a way that is clear. Clarity in speech is an act of compassion for the listener. So we try to speak in a way that's going to help our listener to understand it, understand what we have to say. And that takes effort to learn to articulate what we're saying. So these are all aspects of right speech which go beyond simply what the precept requires us to do. And the same thing applies to all of the other precepts as well. A precept on not killing, for example. Right? So these days, with a few exceptions, like maybe cockroaches or something, then that's a bit of a challenge. But generally speaking, in our lives, in a modern city, we don't really have to kill. But the problem with that, though, is that it doesn't mean that our life is necessarily harmless. What it means is that modern living has very successfully hidden away a lot of the costs and the harms that we create. The killing is going on, the death is going on, the destruction is going on at a much greater rate than it was before. But we just don't see it because it's not in our yard. We don't go fishing, so we don't see the fish being killed. But when we cook fish, it's there. We don't slaughter the cow, so we don't see that. And so things are put aside outside of our view. But those things that go outside of our view are often terrible. And the horrors of modern factory farming, for example, go way beyond anything that the Buddha ever talked about or imagined. Or even something like fishing. You compare what fishing would have been in those days. You go down to the Ganges and throw a net in and pull up a few fish or something. And these days they have these huge trawlers that go through the ocean with huge, massive factories that just destroy so much of the ocean's life. And most of it just gets thrown away anyway. So the destructiveness that human beings have managed to create through the power of our industrial technology leaves behind this devastation and this death and destruction. So this is something that we morally have to grapple with, right? I mean, we're not personally out there ordering these things to happen, but we participate in a society where these things happen. So at the very least, we should be aware of what's happening, take the time and the effort to inform ourselves, and we should consider, what do we want to do? Again, it's not a matter of being perfect or being pure, because if we look around, everything has a cost. And this also is something that the Buddha realized. And the famous story when the Bodhisattva was sitting just before he went into meditation, and he saw the plow turning up the clods of earth, and the worms, they're just plowing to make the rice. And even that, they're turning up the worms, and the birds are coming down feeding the worms. And you can see that even something so seemingly wholesome and simple still involves that level of death and destruction. So there's no such thing. The Buddha was, from right from the beginning, the Buddha was clear that you can't have like a completely pure and harmless life while we're living here in samsara. It just doesn't happen. But we still have a moral responsibility to try to reduce our harm as much as we can, to live in a way that is going to be in accordance with the Dhamma and that is going to bring life and flourishing and abundance to sentient beings and to other creatures, not living in a way that's going to be spreading death and destruction. So again, these are things that I think we need to be asking ourselves, and they're principles of the Dhamma that should challenge us to live our lives in a better way. And the more that we can do that, then I think the more that our minds will become inclined to the Dhamma, and the more that when we come to sit meditation, our minds will be empowered. Now, one of the other things that I've noticed a lot in the way that people talk about meditation today is that we treat meditation as something which is almost like a cure for life. Like life is going to make us suffer, so we got to meditate so we can not suffer, right? And so it's like a therapy, or it's like a sort of spiritual Prozac that you can take that's going to make you feel better, all right? And look, I understand it. I get it. It's a very understandable way to think of it. But it's not really how the Buddha talked about meditation. The Buddha was not saying, live your life in a way that's going to create stress and suffering for yourself, and then use meditation to make yourself feel better so you can get out there again tomorrow and do the same thing. That's not the Buddha's path. Yeah? It's not like a coping mechanism for all the stress of your life. The way the Buddha talked about it is almost the inverse of that. The Buddha said, live your life in a way so that your life will support your meditation, so that everything you do is a part of your Dhamma, is a part of your spiritual practice, and is going to lift your mind up, so that when you come time to meditate, that will be your supporting meditation. So if we want to talk about the meditation method of the Buddha, then this is the meditation method of the Buddha, the Noble Eightfold Path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right samadhi. And when all of those factors are there, then that's what's going to lift your mind up. Now, particularly with right livelihood. Yeah, so these days we find work is often very stressful. We find work is often very it creates a lot of dukkha, and it also is something that work often becomes disconnected from a sense of meaning. Now that varies a lot depending on the kind of work that you do. If you're working, for example, in the caring profession, working in nursing or something like that, then you get to look after people. If you're working, say, in a teaching profession, again, then you're very directly and straightforwardly helping people. So you can see the benefit and the meaning of the work that you're doing. Even if you're doing ordinary things like plumbing, mechanics, building, cooking, any of those kind of blue-collar jobs, also kind of meaningful, because you're doing something which is directly helping people. And so there's a certain satisfaction to be able to do those things. But I think there's a big problem when we come to a lot of the more kind of white-collar jobs and the more kind of office-based work, where people become so disconnected from the result of what you're doing. You're sitting in your office every day working and, getting your spreadsheets done, getting your presentations done, all of these kinds of things. And you're not seeing a connection between the work that you're doing and the actual benefit that it's bringing to people. And it may be that it is bringing benefit to people, but you can't really see that. I think this is a deep problem that we've created for ourselves in the kinds of way that we've organized and we've prioritized work. There was a very profound statement made about that a couple of years ago by the American Congresswoman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's the youngest person ever elected to American Congress. And someone asked her, they were talking about like robotics and the replacement of jobs by robots, and saying, are you afraid that people, you know, we're going to have a problem because people's jobs are going to be taken over by robots and no one's going to have any work anymore? And she gave a very thoughtful response to this. She said, the problem isn't that people will lose their jobs to robots. The problem is that as human beings, we've been told that to find the meaning of our life through the work that we do. And that is what defines our life, rather than the meaning of the work we do being something that supports our life. Our life is something that supports our work. And I thought that was a really insightful statement, and really sort of made me kind of reflect about how we look at the relationship between our lives and the work that we choose to do. So, you know, just have a think about that and think about how that applies to yourself. Obviously, you know, we have to work and we can't always choose how we're going to do, but we can choose to bring a sense of meaning into our work, to invest our work with a sense of meaning and purpose. And even if it's only in small things, it might be gestures of kindness for our colleagues at work. It might be just taking the care to make sure that you're honest and do a good job with everything that you do. It might be, taking that extra step to make sure that the customer or the client feels satisfied or feels listened to. It could be many small things that you do in that work that are going to give that little bit extra, to give you that sense that there is some kind of meaning to what you're doing. And then at the end of the day, when you come to meditate, then you can ask yourself, what good have I done through my job? And here's the thing, it doesn't have to be anything great. Now, you might have a really good job. You might be a doctor, for example, and you might cure people from an illness and alleviate suffering. And so you have a big thing that you can remember at the end of the day and say, wow, I really helped that person. And I'm very lucky as a monk because I get to do that. Right? People will say, oh, you know, that really helped me when you said that talk. And it makes me so happy because I know I helped that. But the trick is that it doesn't have to be anything big, actually. This is the thing. Mind is funny like that. And the mind will be uplifted by small things as well. And so it might be just a very small thing that you do that helps to brighten someone's day. Some little bit of extra that you can do that's going to make somebody else's work a bit easier. Or who knows, countless things it could be. But that's something that you can remember before your meditation that's going to lift your mind up and remind yourself, okay, yeah, I did that thing. Yeah, I did that. And remind yourself of the reason that you're doing it. You know, you're doing the work because you want to help your family, because you want to support yourself and your family to live a good life, and remind yourself of those reasons. And so your work becomes part of what is making your meditation possible, supporting your meditation, rather than obstructing your meditation. Which, by the way, reminds me, I just remembered what I'd forgotten previously at the start of the talk, and that was one other detail I wanted to talk about meditation practice, and that is that for those of you who are not yet established in a meditation practice, then I first of all want to say to anybody here who's not meditating regularly, I want to say to you, congratulations. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. You are about to embark on a wonderful journey. So this is a very wonderful thing to look forward to. So my recommendation for people to begin meditation is to meditate 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week, okay? 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week. If you can't make 20 minutes a day, that's okay. You can do even less, even 5 minutes a day is okay, but try to do at least some meditation every day. Why 5 days a week? Easy, because some days you're going to miss it. And then you'll feel bad. If you say, I'm going to meditate every day, you'll miss a day and then you'll feel bad. So instead, say I'll meditate for 5 days a week, and you miss a day, it's okay, you can catch up. Yeah, and then if you get your 5 days, you can always do another day, never mind as well. So 5 days a week, 20 minutes a day. And 20 minutes is enough to really settle down solidly in your meditation, right? So 20 minutes, you won't go like really deep in your meditation, but you will go down enough to really see that difference. Yeah? And if you meditate regularly 20 minutes a day, you will see the difference. So anyway, this is just my recommended starting point for meditation, 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week. If you can do more, obviously, then that's great. But don't be in too much of a rush, you know? And if you're going to do more than that, I would recommend, again, especially when you're developing your meditation practice, don't be too worried about sitting meditation for a long period of time. Because often that can be, like often what happens is that your mind settles down for like 20 minutes or so, and then it can very easily slip into dullness. And once it does that, you can actually just sit there for a long period of time, but it's not really doing anything. The mind's just kind of static. It's not really deepening your samadhi. So unless, if your meditation's going well and your mind feels bright and energetic and clear, great, keep sitting as long as you want. But don't think, oh, I'm going to push my meditation by making myself sit longer. Instead, sit more often. You know, have 2 sittings a day of 20 minutes. And if you want to do more, have 3 sittings or do some walking meditation. And then let the length of your sitting meditation, let that be led by the energy of the mind, not by your idea of how long you would like to sit. Right? Let your mind lead your meditation. If your mind wants to sit for longer, then let that lead your meditation. So I just want to say those few words on just setting up a regular meditation practice. Okay, so back to the point I was making before. So the general idea I'm making here is that from the Buddha's point of view, it's how to meditate and how to improve our meditation is by living a better life, becoming a better person, by establishing all of these qualities of personality and behavior and accountability that are going to lift up our mind and establish it in the meditation. Now, why do we do all this? Because that's the easy way. Because we're lazy. The Buddha said that there's basically 2 ways. Like he said in the verses, he said, so after he became enlightened, aneka jati samsara, sandhavi sang and sang. Countless births in samsara I've wandered, seeking but not finding. And so that's one way of doing it, right? That's where we can do that if we like. We can wander around samsara, countless lives, until finally we stumble upon the truth. That's what the Buddha did. Or we can listen to what the Buddha said. And what the Buddha taught us is the shortcut. He taught us the easy way. He wanted us to get enlightened as quickly and easily as possible. And that's the Eightfold Path. So that's what we have, that advantage of being able to practice the Eightfold Path. And so anything that we can do to practice that more sincerely, practice that more deeply, is going to lead us that much closer towards enlightenment. So this is my little talk for you today on the foundations of meditation. So at the beginning of the talk, I talked about the method of meditation, about how to go about setting yourself up to sit and meditate. We did a guided meditation. So we looked at actually what we're doing when we're meditating. And afterwards, I focused mostly on like what we do as the foundation and the grounding for a meditation practice. And if we can ground our meditation practice in how we live our life and in setting up a regular practice, we will see that it becomes something that is an essential part of who we are as human beings. It shouldn't be something that we do as like a kind of an optional extra or just like as an obligation or something like that. It should be just as natural as having a meal or going to sleep or something like that. It should be part of our lives that we do, which is part of who we are. And if we do that, we will find that the meditation will become deeper, will become sweeter, it will become more peaceful, and that our lives and our Dhamma will flourish as a result of that. So this is my little talk for you this evening on meditation. And maybe, I don't know if anybody has any questions, or we leave it at that, or what we do for now.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante, for that speech. Yeah. When I do meditation, sometimes I find yeah, that the common problem of mind drifting away, especially when your breath kind of slows and
Right.
so gets subtle. Yeah, that's common problem I have.
So you're feeling like the breath disappears and becomes too subtle to still focus on. So
that's right. Yeah.
Okay. So this is so what this is. If you look at the Anapanasati Sutta, you see that begins with the Dighangva Asasamiti, long breath, and then the Rasam, the shorter breath. And so this is what's happening. Your breath is becoming more subtle, and then Pasambhayam, so the tranquilizing and settling of the breath. So this is all part of that first tetrad, right? First 4 steps of Anapanasati. And so if you're finding that your breath is becoming very soft and very subtle, then that's good, right? That's a sign that's getting somewhere, right? That's getting through that first stage. And that's where the bulk of the work is in meditation, is getting through those first stages of mindfulness. But like you said, sometimes what happens is that the breath becomes so subtle that it almost disappears, okay? Now, this is a good problem to have, okay? Because this is one of those subtle little problems, not even a problem, how do I put this? Like a subtle dynamic that we have to play with and find our balance through in meditation, right? So we're going that little way, but then it's almost like we come to that fork where on the one hand we can go to falling asleep, or on the other hand the mind can lift up and fly. Yeah? And the difference between those two can be so very subtle. Yeah? Actually, it's just a bit of mindfulness. And if we have a bit of mindfulness at that point, then the mind will come together and it will be okay. So what I would suggest at that point, when you find, so the trick here, the key, is to preempt that point a little bit. All right. So don't let it get too far. If you go down too far down that road where the breath has become very soft and very subtle, then it's not easy to come back. Right? The mind can easily just sort of sink down into the quicksand, if you like, and we can lose awareness. So what you do is you notice the pattern, and then when you find your mind's becoming peaceful, then apply yourself to meditation with a little bit more effort. Not too much, because then you'll destroy your meditation. A little bit. So you push forward onto your breath a little bit. When I teach meditation, I always emphasize about relaxing back from the breath. Let the breath come to you. Don't be too tight around it, because that's how you get that tightness. But at this point, you just need to switch strategies a little bit, because it's getting too relaxed with the breath, right? So rather than relaxing from the breath and allowing the breath to soothe us down, we've now reached a point we need to lift our mind up onto the breath with a little bit more force, just a little bit, right? And just applying yourself a little bit more deliberately, a little bit more forcefully, with a little bit more sharpness in your focus. And like I said, the key is to do that when you first detect that your mind is going to go down that road of going a bit too dull. Yeah. When you first detect that, okay, so I'm going to lift my mind onto the breath, and just do that for a few minutes. And if you make a habit of doing that, then you'll find that over time, you'll train your mind to have that sharpness in response to the breath, and that problem won't happen.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, what I notice is, when the breath kind of disappears, I'm more focused on some other sensation in the body.
Right.
So I'm looking for some kind of thing to focus on, I guess.
Yeah. It's if that happens, don't worry about it. Just be patient. Just wait. Yeah, mind needs to come back into balance. But it's amazing, isn't it, right? It's one of those things, you go, where's my breath gone? And when it goes away, when it really goes away, it can be scary also, because you're like, I'm not breathing. Am I ever going to breathe again? And you always see sometimes you get this kind of panic comes up, and like, oh yeah, I'm still here, I'm still breathing. Yeah. So that's great. It's really nice to hear that your meditation's becoming peaceful. Yeah. I always find it such an amazing thing. You know, you look at what the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago, and it still just applies, you know, and right across the whole world. There are people from all different countries, all different cultures, all different backgrounds, and you still meditate and it still works. It's really astonishing, actually.
As a committee, I mean, we are also trying to, I guess when we are engaging in this kind of activity, I mean, we have to raise funds and those kind of stuff. So we have more focus on that kind of activity rather than, I mean, developing our own, I mean, focusing on our own development, I guess.
Right.
That's one of the issues, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it's just about balance. Actually, again, you know, you need to see all of those things, fundraising, management, administration, all of those things. That's part of your right livelihood. You know, that's part of your sila. That's part of establishing the foundations for meditation. And something that I've been so conscious of for such a long time, because when I went, you know, something that I always know, you know, I went to Thailand, I didn't know anything about Buddhism. I was nobody, I was nowhere. I was wandering around with a backpack. I showed up at a monastery just out of the blue, and someone said, here's a room. Stay. Someone said, mealtime is such and such. You want something to eat? Come, eat. You want to learn how to meditate? Here, we have some teachings. Please, this is how you meditate. And everything was just given to me for nothing, just because I happened to be there. And nobody asked me, I didn't have to pay. I didn't have to qualify for anything. I didn't have to do anything. I just literally wandered in off the street, and everyone was kind and accepting and welcoming, and they supported me there. And I went to another monastery and they supported me there. And everywhere I went, I found that this my own spiritual practice was being looked after and supported by so many people. And I've always been so conscious of that, and so conscious that this is something that I want to do for others as well. I'll tell you a story, an experience that I had a number of years ago. I was going to Germany, and I was actually going to speak at a conference there on bhikkhunis. And so I'm just recollecting the details in my mind as I'm speaking. And that's right. So I was going to arrive in Munich airport, and I knew some bhikkhunis who had set up a monastery there called an Vihara, which is outside of Munich. So the plan was that I was going to stop over in Munich for one night. They were going to take me out to the bhikkhuni monastery. I was going to visit there, and then I would fly on to Hamburg the next day. But when I arrived at like 11:30 in the morning in Munich, and there was nobody there. And, you know, monk's mealtime is like midday, so you tend to get a bit nervous around that time. I'm like, am I going to get any lunch? And then the time got closer and closer to midday, and I'm like, well, that's it. I'll let go of the chance of having lunch for today. And I couldn't see why the nuns weren't there. I'm like, what's going on? And why no one was there to pick me up? And then I realized, and I'm like, that email that I sent to them confirming that I'd be there today, I did send that email, didn't I? So anyway, here I am in Munich, no money, no contacts. I didn't have a mobile phone with me, nothing, right? And so I don't know what to do. It was my first time in Germany, first time in Europe, actually. So I didn't know what are the cultures around these things. So I don't know what am I going to do. So I wandered around. I went to there was a help desk, and I spoke to the help desk, and they weren't much help. So then there was an internet cafe, I went to the internet cafe and I'm like, and the computers, you can use a computer. So it's just, all I want to do is send an email. That's all I need to do is send one email. And the computers are fine. They're all €1. So I go to the guy at the thing and I say, look, told him my situation. I'm a monk. I don't have €1. I literally got no money. And I just need to send one email so that people know that I'm here. And he said, yeah, sure, you can send an email. I said, oh, thank you. He said, that'll be €1. So after asking people and so on, what can they do? Then they said there was a chapel, Wayfarers Chapel at the end of the airport. And this was set up by a local Christian group. And for people like me who were just kind of lost. And so I went there and I went to the chapel and spoke to the people there, and they were so nice and they were so happy to look after me. They gave me a place to stay. They said, look, normally we charge like whatever, €15 to stay overnight here, but you don't have any money, so you just stay there. They let me send an email. In the morning, they even offered me some breakfast and helped to look after me and all of these things. And as it happened, one of the people, there were a couple of people there running it, and one of them was a student of Ayakema. And many of you may know Ayakema was a German bhikkhuni. He was one of the first Theravadan bhikkhunis in modern times. And as it happened, she was also the board member, one of the first board members at Santi Monastery, where I had stayed. Right? So she lived in Sydney before she was a nun. And so she was one of the founders of both What Buddha Dhamma and also the hermitage where I was staying. And that's what you're doing, right? You're setting up a Dhamma center right now. And what consequences might that have in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, 30 years' time? Who knows? And because this fellow had, he was a Christian, but he had, been to see Ayakema and learned meditation from her, because she moved to Munich after she left Australia. She set up a center in Munich. I mean, she left Sri Lanka, she went there. So he knew about her and her teachings. And so we talked about meditation and things like that. And I was just sitting there, and that evening I was doing some meditation. And I felt so grateful to these people who had looked after me. I thought, isn't it so amazing that they have this place and they will just take in a stranger, give them a bed, give them privacy, a bathroom, food to eat, and just look after them in that way. And then suddenly it struck me, but that's what you do every day. I mean, at the time I was running Santi Monastery, and I was like, that's literally what we do every day, is we take in people, we give them a place to stay, and we support them. And we don't think twice about it. It's just the normal thing that we do. And, just to realize how meaningful and how profound that is for people to be able to have them. And so when you're setting up a Buddhist center and a Dhamma center, you're doing something which is very profound and which will have so many effects for generations. And there will be so many people who will wander in off the street, or who will just take the chance to listen to a talk, or just maybe not even wander in off the street, maybe just walk past and see what you're doing, and who will find, oh, that's so amazing. So many people will see that. So it's amazing that there's a Buddhist temple here, just in this Sydney suburb. And that will matter to people in a way that you can't imagine. So never think that the work that you're doing is small or minor, or that it's a distraction from the Dhamma. Actually, it's supporting yourselves and supporting so many people in their Dhamma practice.
Thank you for that. Yeah, putting it in that way, it's good.
Yeah,
I mean, it's good to think it that way. Yeah.
And I'm sure you've had the same experience, and everyone else. Maybe you're growing up and your kids or something, the local temple you go to, and you just take those things for granted. You don't realize how special that is, yeah? Because everything that we're doing is just going against the stream of the world, right? Because we're not doing it for profit. We're not doing it for gain or advantage or anything like that, purely doing it for the sake of the Dhamma. Yeah. Okay, very good. Maybe we should finish up for this evening. What do you think? would you like to do some sharing of merits?
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll do a chant for the sharing of merits before we finish. Akasattha Chabhumattha Devanaga Mahidika Panyam Tang Anumoditva Tiram Rakhantu Lokasasanam Akasattha Chabhumattha Devanaga Mahidika Panyam Tang Anumoditva Tiram Rakhantu Desanam Akasattha Chabhumattha Devanaga Mahidika Punyang tang anumoditva tiram rakhantu mam paranti etavata ca amhehi sambhatang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya etavata ca amhehi sambhatang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya etavata ca amhehi sambhatang punya sampadang sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, so I thank you all for your presence here today, and I wish you all the best in your lives and your Dhamma.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.